Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to take a deep dive into the world of FP&A.
Absolutely. Today, we're going to explore how to become total data masters in the world of financial planning and analysis.
And to help us navigate this exciting landscape, we're turning to a fantastic paper.
That's right. It's called Mastering Data in FP&A.
This deep dive is all about giving your organization a crystal ball.
Oh, I like that. A crystal ball to see what's coming and adapt faster than the competition.
Exactly. The paper kicks off by emphasizing why analytics is no longer a nice-to-have, but a must-have for businesses to truly thrive.
It's true. They even talk about competing on analytics, meaning the companies who really nail the data game, well, they come out on top.
It's like having that secret weapon that gives you an edge.
And get this, a McKinsey report cited in the paper. It found that organizations that really get their data act together can see a 25% jump in their EBITDA.
Whoa, 25%. That's a pretty significant impact. But here's the thing. The 2024 FP&A Trends Survey, also mentioned in the paper.
Yeah, it reveals a pretty shocking stat.
Over half of FP&A teams are still relying on spreadsheets for planning.
You're kidding. In today's data-driven world, relying solely on spreadsheets is like bringing a knife to a gunfight.
So true. So if analytics is such a superpower, why is FP&A falling behind?
Well, the paper identifies three major roadblocks to analytics adoption. The first one is risk aversion in finance departments.
Because it requires a whole new way of thinking, right?
Exactly. And it often comes with, a pretty hefty price tag.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Then there's the fear factor, past tech failures leaving those scars.
So organizations are hesitant to jump back in if they've been burned before.
Right. And lastly, there's a massive skills gap. FP&A teams now need data scientists and architects, roles that are just emerging in the field.
It's almost like they need to become bilingual speaking both finance and data.
Precisely. And another interesting point from the 2024 FP&A Trends Survey.
Yeah, lay it on us.
FP&A teams are spending a whopping 45% of their time on just collecting and validating data.
45%. That's almost half their time on tasks that a good system could automate.
Sadly, it's true, and it explains why so many FP&A teams are struggling to keep up, let alone become those strategic advisors everyone needs.
So how do we fix this? Where do we even begin?
Well, the paper lays out a three-step process to whip your data into shape and ensure it's actually useful. Information strategy, and data governance.
Okay, so it's like building a house. You need a solid foundation before you can even think about putting up those walls.
Love that analogy. And the first step, that information strategy, is all about figuring out what truly makes your organization tick. It's about identifying those drivers that really impact the bottom line.
What data truly matters.
Exactly. And the paper gives this cool example of a consumer goods company that uses something called a value driver tree to break down their key financial measures.
A value driver tree. Intriguing. Tell me more.
Think of it like an actual tree. You've got the roots, the trunk, and the branches. The roots are your fundamental business activities. The trunk represents core financial metrics like, say, sales or profit. And the branches, those are the levers you can pull to impact those metrics.
Okay, I'm starting to see the picture here.
So for our consumer goods company, those branches might be things like brand building, marketing spend, and cost control.
So it's about understanding how those branches, those activities, ultimately affect the overall health of the tree, the bottom line.
Precisely. It's about those cause and effect relationships within your business.
So that's information strategy, figuring out what data truly matters. What's next?
Next up is your data strategy. Think of it as the blueprint for actually getting that data you need.
It's about figuring out where it lives, how often you need it, and how to make it squeaky clean.
Exactly. And unfortunately, many companies are, they're lagging behind here.
Yeah, tell us more.
This stat from the 2024 FP&A Trends Survey, actually cited in the paper, it found that 43% of organizations are held back by outdated technology.
Ouch. That's a recipe for getting left in the dust.
It is. Let me give you an example of a company that got this right. Imagine you're running a business selling, let's say, fast-moving consumer goods.
Fast-moving consumer goods. Sorry, could you break that down a bit?
Of course. Think everyday products that fly off the shelves. Groceries, personal care items, things people buy all the time.
Gotcha. Stuff that moves fast.
Right. Now imagine trying to make sense of data coming from sales, customer feedback, and your supply chain all at once.
That sounds like a data nightmare. trying to juggle all that information.
It can be, but this company, they used a clever data strategy to blend all that info, even used AI to predict future trends.
Wow, so it's not just about collecting the data, it's about using it to get ahead of the game.
Exactly. And the result, they were able to reduce waste, streamline their operations, and ultimately boost those profits.
So this data strategy isn't just about tech, it's about giving your organization the power to make smarter, more strategic decisions.
100%. It's about setting yourself up for success. And that brings us to the final piece of the data puzzle.
Hit me with it.
Data governance. It might not sound as exciting as AI or fancy dashboards, but trust me, it's crucial.
Okay, I'm all ears. Why is it so important?
Well, think of it this way. Even the most sophisticated analytics tools, they're useless if you're feeding them bad data. It's like trying to bake a cake with rotten eggs.
You're not going to end up with a very tasty cake.
Exactly. The paper actually quotes an FP&A board member who put it quite bluntly.
What'd they say?
We are poisoned by bad quality data. Strong words.
Wow, yeah, poisoned is a pretty powerful image. And the 2024 FP&A Trends Survey, it reveals that bad data quality is a major obstacle for a whopping 35% of organizations.
So it's a widespread issue, and that's where data governance comes in, creating a system of checks and balances to make sure your data is accurate, consistent, and used responsibly.
So who's in charge of keeping the data squeaky clean? Is it the IT department's job?
Not always. The paper suggests assigning, let's call them business data owners for different data domains.
So it's not just about being a tech whiz, it's about understanding the data and caring about its quality.
Absolutely. You need someone who understands the data inside and out, and making sure everyone's on the same page is critical. The paper actually highlights a case study of a pharmaceutical company.
Okay, what happened?
Their FP&A system launch completely went off the rails because of, you guessed it, data quality issues.
Actually, what were the consequences?
They ended up millions of dollars over budget. A tough lesson to learn.
Yikes. Millions over budget. That's a stark reminder of why data governance matters.
It is. So how do we combat this data poisoning? Well, one key concept is the golden record.
Ooh, the golden record. Sounds important.
It is. It's the single source of truth for each piece of data.
Like the VIP data point, the one everyone agrees on.
Exactly. Now imagine you have multiple systems holding similar information. How do you choose the golden one?
That's a great question because I can see how that could get messy fast.
And it does. The paper shares this example of an information services company.
Oh, what happened there?
They had 8 different systems for customer data. It was pure chaos.
8 systems. That sounds like trying to solve a jigsaw puzzle with pieces from 8 different boxes.
Exactly. And that's why having a single source of truth, that golden record, is so important.
It prevents those data discrepancies that can really mess up your analysis.
Right. If everyone's working from different data sets, you'll never get a clear picture.
So how do you go about establishing this golden record? Is there a process?
The paper suggests a 5-step process for data quality, but we'll dive into that in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to uncovering those steps. So we've got our data curated, but what about the tech side of things? What does a powerful FP&A data architecture actually look like?
Great question, and luckily, the paper provides a really helpful diagram to illustrate this. We'll break it all down for you when we return for part 2 of this deep dive.
Awesome. Can't wait. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back, everyone. Ready to dive back into the world of data.
Absolutely. We've laid the groundwork, talking about curating data and making sure it's clean and reliable, but now it's time to see how these concepts play out in the real world.
Yeah, because seeing how other companies have tackled these data challenges, I think that can be super inspiring, right?
Absolutely. And in this part, we're going to be drawing on some fascinating examples from the Mastering Data in FP&A paper.
I love that. It's like getting a sneak peek into the data playbooks of these successful companies.
Exactly. So let's revisit the idea of the data strategy, that roadmap for getting the right data to the right people at the right time.
Right. It's all about having that plan.
And the paper highlights a really fantastic example from Hapag-Lloyd, a global shipping company.
Shipping.
Ooh, that sounds like a logistical nightmare. I can only imagine the data challenges.
Oh, it is. Imagine trying to manage shipping routes across 128 countries using spreadsheets.
128 countries. Spreadsheets would be exploding.
They were. It was incredibly manual, time-consuming, and, well, prone to errors,
Yeah, a recipe for disaster. So what do?
They decided to implement a solution from Board International to digitize, accelerate, and automate their entire logistics process.
Okay, so they brought in the big guns, the tech firepower. But I bet a sophisticated system like that requires a solid data strategy, right? You can't just plug and play.
You got it. They knew they couldn't just plug in a new system and expect everything to magically work. They needed a clear plan for how to manage this data transformation.
So what did their data strategy look like? What were the key elements?
Well, first they had to figure out how to integrate the new system with their existing IT infrastructure.
Mm.
They needed data to flow seamlessly between all their various systems.
Right, no more data silos. Exactly. And second, they had to ensure that the solution could handle the complex FP&A modeling, analysis, and reporting that they needed.
Okay, so technical integration and meeting the needs of the FP&A team. Got it. So did it work?
It did. The board solution they chose was able to connect with both their upstream and downstream systems, creating that single source of truth we talked about earlier.
That's fantastic. No more spreadsheet silos, everyone working from the same data set. It's beautiful, a data symphony.
I love that analogy. And it's a perfect example of how a well-defined data strategy can set the stage for a successful technology implementation.
It's all about having that plan in place.
Right. And let's shift gears and talk about data governance.
Data governance, remember, that's about ensuring data quality and reliability, making sure we're working with good data.
Exactly. And the paper gives a great example of a global beverage company that was, well, they were struggling with data inconsistencies.
I can imagine that would be a problem, especially for a company with operations all over the world, what was going wrong.
Well, they were trying to make these critical decisions based on data that was fragmented and, frankly, unreliable. Imagine trying to forecast sales when your data is telling different stories depending on where it's coming from.
It's like trying to bake a cake with ingredients that have different measurements on the labels. You're never going to get a consistent result.
Exactly. And they knew they needed to get their data house in order, so they embarked on what they called an information strategy project.
Okay, so back to basics. Understanding their data landscape and establishing those clear data governance principles.
Precisely. They needed to figure out what was causing these inconsistencies, get to the root of the problem, and create a system to ensure data quality going forward.
So did this information strategy project work? Did they manage to whip their data into shape?
They did. The results were really impressive. Not only were they able to provide more targeted and relevant information to their decision makers, and much faster, I might add, but they also managed to reduce the size of their data footprint by over 60%.
Wow, so they were working smarter, not harder. This information strategy project wasn't just about improving data quality. It was about making their data operations leaner and more efficient.
Exactly. It's a perfect example of how data governance can actually save you time and money.
Now that's what I like to hear. So we've seen how a well-defined data strategy and a focus on data governance can have a huge impact on a business.
Absolutely. And speaking of impact, remember that golden record concept we discussed? Having that single authoritative source for each piece of data.
Ah, yes, the golden record, the VIP data point. Why is that so important again?
Well, think back to that information services company with 8 different systems for customer data.
Oh yeah, that was a mess.
It was. That's a classic example of what happens when you don't have a clear golden record. You end up with multiple versions of the truth, which can lead to confusion, errors, you name it.
Right. 8 different answers to the same question, total chaos.
Exactly. The golden record is all about establishing one source of truth. So let's say you're dealing with customer data. You decide that your CRM system is the golden record. That's where the most accurate, the most up-to-date customer information lives.
Got it. So if any other system needs customer data, they should pull it from that CRM system, not create their own separate record.
Exactly. That way you ensure consistency and prevent those data discrepancies that can really throw off your analysis.
Okay, so it's about streamlining, making sure everyone's singing from the same song sheet, that single source of truth, that data utopia.
I like that, data utopia. And the paper actually provides a really helpful visual tool to map this out.
Oh yeah, I remember that. It was a table, right?
Right, it's a simple table where you list your data attributes across the top and your systems down the side.
And then you mark which system is the primary source, the golden record,
Yeah.
and which ones are secondary.
Exactly. And by taking the time to map it out like this, you can create a much more streamlined and efficient data architecture.
It's all about getting organized, creating that data flow. Okay, so we've covered data strategy, data governance, and the importance of that golden record.
Right. It's all about building that solid foundation.
But now I'm curious about the technology side of things. What are some real-world examples of companies that have successfully implemented these FP&A solutions?
The paper highlights several great case studies. Each one illustrates a different aspect of, FP&A technology and implementation strategies. Let's start with Eversource Energy.
Eversource Energy. Tell me more.
They're a large utility company that faced some pretty significant data challenges after a merger.
Ah, mergers. I bet those can really shake things up when it comes to data.
They can. You're trying to blend different systems, different processes. In Eversource's case, they needed to deliver consistent financial data to their corporate teams.
Makes sense. You need everyone on the same page.
Right, but their existing systems were clunky, manual, and very reliant on, you guessed it, spreadsheets.
Sounds like they were stuck in the data dark ages.
Pretty much. And their users were desperate for real-time data and insights, which their old systems just couldn't provide.
So they needed an upgrade, a data rescue mission.
Exactly. And they turned to, well, you might have guessed it, Board International for a solution.
Board International again. They seem to be the superheroes of FP&A transformations.
They do have a great track record, and in Eversource's case, the board solution provided them with that single platform to pull data from all their different sources. They were finally able to get that real-time performance visibility.
So they created a data command center, a one-stop shop for all their FP&A needs, data integration, analysis, reporting, the whole shebang.
Precisely. It's another great example of how the right technology can empower your organization to make, those fast, informed decisions that give you that competitive edge.
It's all about having the right tools and making sure those tools are a good fit for your specific needs.
Absolutely. And now let's look at another case study that focuses on user adoption and change management.
Okay, user adoption. That's huge.
Well, they wanted to improve their financial planning process. They were aiming for greater efficiency, more flexibility, and better visibility, having that clear picture of what's going on.
It sounds like a worthy goal.
It was. But like so many companies, their existing technology was, well, it was holding them back.
I'm sensing those spreadsheets are about to make a comeback.
You got it. They were relying on manual processes and fragmented systems.
So they're spending more time wrestling with the data than actually gaining insights from it.
Exactly. And their stakeholders, they were demanding more proactive early warning insights, which their current systems just couldn't deliver.
So they needed a system that could anticipate, not just react.
Right. They needed to be ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
So they decided to implement the Board Intelligent Planning Platform.
Light strikes again. What did this platform do?
Well, it gave them that single point of access, that unified view of their data. They were able to consolidate all their planning processes, automate data collection, and thankfully, reduce their reliance on those pesky spreadsheets.
It was a data liberation movement.
I like that. And their controllers, they were finally freed up to focus on that high-value work, the analysis and interpretation that drives strategic decisions.
Right, because that's where the real magic happens, when you can step back and see the big picture.
Exactly. And they were finally able to provide those proactive insights that their stakeholders were demanding.
So it was a win-win. They got the insights they needed, and their team was happier and more productive. It's a great example of how technology can empower your team to be more strategic.
It really is. But here's a key takeaway. Technology is just one piece of the puzzle. They recognized the importance of change management, making sure their team was fully on board with the new system.
Right, because it's not just about throwing technology at the problem. It's about bringing people along on that journey.
Exactly. User adoption, it's essential for success. They invested in training and support, made sure their team felt comfortable and confident using the new platform.
So it's about investing in your people, not just the technology. Okay, so we've seen how Hapag-Lloyd streamlined their logistics, how a global beverage company tackled data quality, how Eversource Energy gained real-time visibility. These are some pretty inspiring examples.
They are, and they highlight those key themes, the data strategy, data governance, choosing the right technology, focusing on user adoption, it all comes together.
It's like a data orchestra, everything working in harmony.
I love that. And speaking of harmony, I'm curious about the link between data literacy and technology implementation. Remember that data literacy maturity matrix? Can you remind us about that framework?
Oh, yeah, that was interesting. It's about finding that balance between the human side and the tech side, right?
Yeah. Exactly. The ideal scenario is to have both your data culture and your technology kind of evolving together in sync. But oftentimes you see companies where the technology is way ahead of the culture.
So they might have all the fancy tools, but no one knows how to use them effectively. It's like giving someone a smartphone when they've never even used a computer before.
That's a great analogy. They might be able to make a call, but they're not going to be able to unlock its full potential. There's going to be a steep learning curve.
Right. And on the flip side, you might have a company with a super data savvy team, but they're stuck using outdated technology.
Right. So they have the knowledge, they have the enthusiasm, but their tools are holding them back. It's frustrating.
Yeah, it's like having a Ferrari, but you're stuck in first gear.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to find that sweet spot where your technology empowers your people and your people are embracing the technology.
It's like a data dance.
I love that. And the data literacy maturity matrix can help you figure out where your organization falls on that spectrum, identify areas where you might need to level up.
It's like a roadmap for your data journey, making sure you're making progress on both fronts. Okay, so we've seen some inspiring examples. We've talked about the technology, the importance of data literacy. But what about those companies that are just starting out on their data journey? What advice would you give them?
That's a great question, and that's exactly what we'll be exploring in part 3 of our deep dive. We'll talk about creating a data-driven culture from the ground up and share some inspiring examples of companies that have made that leap.
Sounds good. Can't wait.
Yeah.
We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back, data enthusiasts, ready for the final chapter of our data-driven adventure.
Absolutely. We've talked about curating data, building that tech stack, but now it's time to unlock the real magic, building a data-driven culture.
It's like we've built this amazing race car, but now we need the skilled driver to take the wheel.
Exactly. And that driver is a data-driven mindset. We can have the most amazing tools and systems, but if people don't embrace data, well, it's all for nothing.
Right. It's about shifting that mindset, moving beyond data as a chore and embracing it as a superpower.
Love that. And the Mastering Data in FP&A paper, it gives us some great guidance on how to make this happen.
Okay, I'm ready for the roadmap. Where do we even begin?
One of the key things they emphasize is starting at the top with the leadership team.
Makes sense. Change often starts at the top, but getting leaders on board, it can be tough, especially if they're used to making decisions based on, gut instinct and experience.
It's true, those gut instincts, they can be powerful, but data can provide those crucial insights to back them up or even challenge them.
So how do you convince those leaders to embrace this data-driven approach?
Remember those nudges we talked about earlier? The paper suggests some clever tactics.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Well, things like setting data-driven KPIs, maybe incorporating data literacy into performance reviews.
So it's about aligning those incentives and expectations.
Exactly, making it clear that data fluency, it's a valuable skill, not just for the analysts.
Right, it's a skill for everyone.
And it's about showcasing those data success stories, demonstrating how data has led to better outcomes.
Show them the wins. Paint that picture of how data can make a real difference.
Precisely. But what about the rest of the organization? How do you build data literacy beyond just the leadership level?
Yeah, it can't just be the leaders, right? It's got to be everyone.
Right, it's a team effort. The paper emphasizes the importance of training and development, creating opportunities for everyone, no matter their role, to learn about data.
It's about making data less intimidating, more accessible.
Yeah, almost like learning a new language, right?
Exactly. And luckily, there are so many resources available now. Online courses, workshops, even these cool data visualization tools that make exploring data fun.
It's about making it engaging and relevant.
So we've got the leaders, the broader team, but what about the FP&A team? What skills do they need in this data-driven world?
They need to be leading the charge, that's for sure. And they need a blend of skills, both technical and communication.
So they need to be data detectives, but also great storytellers.
I like that. They need to be able to communicate those findings in a way that makes sense to decision makers.
So they need to be able to bridge that gap between the world of data and the world of decisions.
Exactly. Translating those complex insights into clear, actionable recommendations. And the paper talks about data sense.
Data sense. Fill me in.
It's an intuitive understanding of how data can be used to solve problems. It's like having that sixth sense for data.
So it's about seeing those patterns, those connections that others might miss.
Precisely. And it's something you can develop with practice, experimentation.
Okay, so we've got leadership buy-in, training, data skills. It's all coming together. Any other strategies for building this data-driven utopia?
Well, the paper highlights communication and collaboration.
So it's not just about having data, it's about sharing it.
Exactly. Break down those silos, create spaces where people can easily share data, discuss insights, and, learn from each other.
It's about creating that data buzz.
Love it. And when data leads to a win, celebrate it.
Yes. Positive reinforcement. Show people that data-driven decisions, they lead to good things.
Exactly. And that brings us back to Data governance.
Right, setting those ground rules, making
Yeah.
sure data is used ethically.
Exactly. Data governance builds trust. People need to know that the data they're using, it's accurate, it's reliable.
It's about building that foundation of trust, making sure everyone's comfortable with how data is being used.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the theory, the strategies, but I'm always a fan of real-world examples. Does the paper highlight any companies that have really nailed this data-driven culture thing?
Yeah. Give us some inspiration.
Absolutely. One inspiring example is Toyota Motor Europe. They adopted this platform called the Board Enterprise Planning Platform.
Catchy name. What do they use it for?
They use it to standardize their financial reporting, their variance analysis, and long-term CapEx planning all across 40 group companies.
40 group companies. That's a lot of data to wrangle.
It is. And before, they were heavily reliant on spreadsheets. You can imagine the inconsistencies, the manual effort. It was a nightmare.
I bet it was. So this board platform, it was like a data knight in shining armor.
It was. They were able to automate their data collection, streamline those cumbersome processes, and really empower their controllers to focus on the analysis.
So it's about freeing up their time and brain power to focus on the strategic stuff.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is that the implementation of this new platform, it went hand in hand with a cultural shift.
So it wasn't just about the technology, it was about changing mindsets too.
Precisely. They invested in training, they communicated the benefits, and they fostered this culture of collaboration, data sharing.
Wow. So technology was a catalyst for this broader cultural transformation.
Exactly. And Toyota Motor Europe, they're a great example of how building a data-driven culture, it's achievable.
It's inspiring to see companies like Toyota leading the way, showing that it can be done.
Right. It shows that the benefits are worth the effort.
So as we wrap up this data-driven journey, this deep dive into mastering data in FP&A, what are the key takeaways for our listeners?
I think the biggest takeaway is that this is a journey, not a destination. Building a data-driven culture, it takes time, it takes effort, but the rewards are immense.
It's about embracing the journey, taking those small steps, and celebrating those wins along the way.
Exactly. And the power of data, it's within everyone's reach, not just the tech experts. It's for anyone who wants to make better decisions, solve problems, and really move their organization forward.
So go forth and become data masters. And if you're ever feeling lost on that data journey, remember, this deep dive is always here for you. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep exploring that fascinating world of data.